My guests today are Oscar-nominated filmmakers Chris Lavis and Maciek Szczerbowski of Clyde Henry Productions with their animated short film, The Girl Who Cried Pearls. Now, their first film, Madam Tutley Putley, was recognized with an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Short in 2007. Now, both of them went on to adapt Maurice's Sendak's Higglety Pigglety Pop for NFB and Warner Brothers and directed Meryl Streep in the film. Now, in 2016, the duo were recognized with a nomination for Best Art Direction at the Canadian Screen Awards for their work on Guy Madden's feature, The Forbidden Room. Then in 2019, they created the VR film Gymnasia, a unique blend of virtual reality and stop-motion animation, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and went on to win numerous awards, including a Canadian Screen Award for Best Immersive Experience. Today, they are here to discuss their Oscar-nominated Best Animated Short, The Girl Who Cried Pearls, a stunning short film in every way. So let's welcome Chris Lavis and Maciek Szczerbowski to the show.
Thank you so much for having us. As you know, we made a film now with a pronounceable name. That was the number one goal behind the whole endeavor. It was the main. That's where did the idea come from? It was an idea. It was for a film that you could pronounce the name.
I love it. I love it. So, where did the story originate from?
Hit it.
Well, we were working on another film many years ago, and we noticed something that was happening on set while we were filming a scene where we directed our actress to cry, to produce tears as a professional that weren't heartfelt, but looked good on screen. And when we called cut on the scene, we noticed that the little cheap necklace that we made for her out of dollar store pearls had broken. And the pearls were lying strewn across the floor right at her feet as tears were streaming down her face. And something about that felt correct on some let's say narrative level, symbolic maybe even, and we didn't know what to do with it. It's just something that we wrote into our notebook later that evening when we went out. And
yeah, like the image in a Buñuel film almost. You know, it just the collision of this and this seemed to make cinema.
But we didn't really know what to do with it. There was no story. There certainly wasn't a resolution or anything like that. But we kept it, and from over the years, things kept falling into our consciousness, which we thought were sympathetic ideas that could actually work with this image, almost as if you were making a collage. And then one day, I guess maybe 15 years later or so, we were in a hotel on a fjord in Norway and teaching a class. And afterwards, just hung out at the hotel room and chatted about stories we've heard and movies we've seen, and something clicked. It suddenly found its reason to exist.
So, how long did it take you to write the script?
Oh, I think so we came up with these little images were floating around in our heads for years, and we worked on other projects, and there's a few of those that we have right now that are not yet movies. They might be movies in 5 years. They might never coalesce into movies. The actual script writing was pretty standard. Once we actually got down to it, we're talking a couple months, and then obviously over the course of the years of making the film and editing it, that you adjust little things. But generally, actually, once we got down to the script, it when you read it now, it's quite close to the final movie.
And when we say standard, for us, it was the first time we ever did such a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you do your first script. But the visuals of this film are so captivating.
Oh,
it stands out on its own. I mean, I spent so much time rewatching this film because I was afraid that I was going to miss a detail, because everything just captures your eye. Your eye wants to see every little detail in every frame. So tell me about the animation, because with the characters themselves, they're very marionette-like in movement, which I loved. But I also noticed that there's a style that you used in the story based in Montreal, and then there was a more complex style used in the Paris location. I like the separation of the styles, but why was that chosen?
Well, the parts that happen in Paris happen in, so to speak, modern time, in our time. The parts that happen in Montreal are a recollection. They're an illustration of the narrator's memory. So what we decided to do is to make the memory part, I guess, visually resemble the ideas of a memory, which is that they're a little bit blurry on the edges. They're that you can recall a conversation you've had with someone 30 years previous, and you can remember who you're talking to, where you were, even what the time of day was or what the mood was, but you don't remember their lips moving, you don't remember them blinking, and it doesn't matter. You remember what was said and what happened. So we tried to make that a little bit more kind of. We built ourselves these plexiglass filters that we've melted a little bit under a heat gun and warped to put in front of the lens, so that the corners of the screen would fall apart a little bit in detail. Whereas the stuff that's happening in the present day was crisp. Even the puppets were different. They were sculpted they were made out of silicone. They had a much more elaborate and realistic paint job as far as the skin textures. And the detail was the first time we had to build a set that was actually clean. What's kind of fun about the memory part is that it's all scenic breakdown and patinas and dust and mud and spatter, whereas which comes naturally to us. The idea of building a set that was perfectly clean and couldn't have a filthy fingerprint anywhere, that was a challenge.
Well,
But as far as the detail you referred to, just before that, just a funny anecdote, because our composer keeps saying that our film is best watched on pause because you can actually study it.
no, it's true because when if you just look at the frame of the front and the interior of the pawn shop, your eyes are going everywhere.
I hope that doesn't make you miss what's happening.
No, 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 because I watched the film for the story multiple times, and then I go back and just kind of look at the other elements after I understand the story. But one of the things that I was so amazed was how you were able to create emotion from the characters in the memory portion of the film, even without their mouths moving, but it was the turning of the heads, the movement of their hands still helped the audience to understand their emotion and thoughts. How difficult was that to achieve?
You know, it was not as difficult as you think, because in some ways it might be easier. You know, the more detail that you put into a facial animation or into a puppet, the less the less there is for the viewer to fill in. And really, the most emotional scenes in puppetry and marionettes come when the puppets are primitive enough so that the viewer fills in the blanks, and that's a way of you putting your own emotion into a story and character. So, in some ways, it was a risk, we thought, because the puppets don't have their masks. They're neutral masks. We thought it was a risk, but it's not. It's, we should have known from the very beginning that the power of puppetry is so ancient, and that is the power of it. That is let's say, what you contribute, the context you put in as a viewer is really one of the beautiful powers of this medium.
And we're also fathers now. We're each raising our own daughters, and we've been watching while writing this film. We've been watching them play with their toys, with their little dolls, their Barbies or whatever. And when that, they mean it. there is no self-consciousness when they're performing with a puppet. They do the voices, they move the puppets around in a really silly way, and it works. It's impossible not to understand what's happening. We're, even though we're grown up now, we were that once too, and though we've outgrown it, let's say, we're still hardwired to understand this stuff. When a kid is putting on a little puppet show for you, it is some of the greatest puppetry you've ever seen. It's honest and perfect, and nothing blinks. There is no grimaces, and it's completely unnecessary. You, like as Chris said, you infuse yourself into it in order to finish off the picture. And I think through the contribution of your own emotional intellect, it becomes more dear to you.
Well, oh, absolutely. And that's the thing that I kept looking at. I was looking at the emotion and the movement coming from the characters in the memory portion. And because the audience feels that. You don't see facial expressions on, I guess I can call them puppets in a way. You
Sure.
don't see the facial expressions, but it's just the movement. Like you said, we're following along. We know what's going on. We are engaged deeply into this story because we're all wanting to see how this thing is going to play out. And
Well, we grew up on as probably kids in grade school, later grade school, or even early high school. There was a book published on how to draw comics the Marvel way by Stan Lee and John Buscema, and this was kind of like our this is what we used instead of going to film school. There was a very important lesson in it, which is that if you're going to draw these, let's say, superheroes, they can't stand like a normal man. They can't point like a normal man, or run, or react like we do. Every gesture has to be exacerbated by 25%. It has to be unnaturally dynamic. Only then will it work. And I think that we use that lesson in how we work with puppets. And since we work with puppets, and since we come from a background of live theater, we still work with actors. When we have a script, before we start shooting anything in animation, we invite our friends, really talented actors from Montreal, to play with us in the studio to try to interpret these characters, and we film it from every angle. We let them improvise. We let them do wild takes. And when somehow, because they're working with us and not on an actual movie, they overact. They really play. They get very happy and boisterous, and in a way that will probably in a normal movie look a little hammy. But for us, they're actually accidentally performing the Marvel way, which is to say their physical language, their gestures and mannerisms become kind of hyperbolic. And when we translate that into a stop motion animation, it gives the puppet a kind of an extraordinary inner life, where hopefully, I mean, our desire is that through that method, we let the audience forget for very quickly that they're watching dolls, but that they're hopefully watching characters.
well, yeah, you're looking, when I was watching the scene in the pawn shop between the pawnbroker and the young boy, you feel all the emotion that the young boy is receiving from the pawnbroker, who is a mean, greedy man. And you feel for the young boy. The pawnbroker is like, are you an idiot? Are you stupid? Because he just thinks the only thing we're in this world for is making money. And I love the fact that the young boy, he was really choosing love over greed. And And I just like the way how that whole story played out. But I love just in that scene alone, you notice the emotion. Now, there's a scene in this film which kind of really took me by surprise. And so I want to ask you about it because I want to know what the audience reaction was to the mean mother who took her daughter's hand and burned it on the stove as punishment. I thought it was kind of a harsh scene to watch, even when I was watching the film over and over again.
Well, two-part answer about the pawnbroker. I'll make both of these quick to get to the mother. So part of the emotion and the dynamic between the pawnbroker and the boy, of course, it's in the gestures, but there's a little cinema trick that we did there too, because he visits the pawn shop maybe 4 times. And when we were shooting this scene with actors, and then we repeated this exact same experiment when we shot it, the power dynamic starts to shift between them. So what we did when we were shooting the live action reference, every time, the first time he visits the pawn shop, we actually had the actor playing the pawnbroker was on a apple box, so he's much taller than the boy. And then every time he visits from then on, we put the boy on another apple box, so the height gets closer and closer and closer. So at one point they're equals, and at one point the power dynamic shifts until the boy is sort of, he's telling, it's his story now. The power dynamic is completely shifted, and we played that really with apple boxes and height. And no one's really noticed that, but it's one of those things that I think gets in the back of your brain. And the scene with the mother burning the girl's hand is a story that came from the co-writer of the script, Isabelle Mandelian. And it comes from an actual very famous case here in Montreal, here in Quebec, that's been done as in plays and television adaptations, of a woman who burned her daughter's hand on a stove. And now there's some question about whether it really existed, but it's a very famous kind of local myth that we weaved into the story.
Exactly. A little wink.
When I think it was probably the 3rd time I watched this film.
Man.
Because I kept going back. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. There's a twist. There's this mysterious twist in this film, and I don't want to miss it. Of course, with me looking at it from an audience's point of view, sometimes we're thinking, okay, that's the story. That's the story. That's what it's about. Because I love when an audience interprets a film, either it's spot on with what the director and the writer was after, or maybe they saw something in a different way. So when the young girl's father died from the trolley accident, she cried that night. The amount of pearls the young boy saw come out of the wall, well, I think he kept all the pearls, and the ones he sold to the pawnbroker were the plastic pellets. What was so funny was that when the Jewish jeweler was standing outside his shop, it was that scene that I'm like, wait a minute. Because I used to work years ago. I used to work in a refinery that made the plastic beads that were shipped all over the world that could be formed into other plastic products. So
Amazing.
I understood when the dock worker goes, oh, it's this new thing from Japan called plastic. And I went, ah. But then I got to thinking, I think the young boy gained his wealth from the real pearls cried from the young girl. And his twist was the box of pearls that he brought to the pawnbroker and opens up an empty box and basically says, you can fill this one up with $100 bills. And because then the pawnbroker's greed got the best of him, but the young boy got the best of the pawnbroker. Was I even close?
Listen, that's a wonderful. It's pretty close, and it's absolutely personal, which is the best way it is.
I think there's many bullseyes to hit here. They're just in different dimensions. Part of the point of leaving something a little bit open ended is that you can do exactly what you just did. And so far, it's impossible and actually kind of incorrect for us to say that anyone's interpretation is wrong.
Well, you know
Yeah.
but you know what was interesting? When I replayed the scene of the young boy in the pawn shop when he brought the box full of pearls, I'm looking at the box of the pearls that he brought. And then I went back, replayed the scene where he opens up the bottom of the wall and the pearls come out. And then there's this overhead shot, the camera shot of the pearls spreading out across the floor. I'm thinking there are more pearls on that floor that would fit into that box. That's why I think he kept the real ones. And he found out because he was always near the dock about the
Yeah, well,
plastic
always near the
ones.
dock is a key. That's a key thing, that he was always near the dock, and that they would steal what they could. I on the airplane yesterday, I watched the film last year in Marienbad, which was one of the most narratively obscure films I think ever made by anybody else. And today, I read an article. I was like, "What the hell is this movie about?" So I went, and there was an article about the film. Uh, and I mean, when I say this is a narratively obscure film, it's right on the edge. And there was a quote from the director saying, "I don't think it's an ambiguous film at all." Uh, and for him, and it was exactly that thing. For him, it's like your version of the movie is the movie. That's like there's nothing ambiguous about it at all. And I think there's also some quote of like, it's like, does it take place over 2 years? Does it take place over 1 year? And his answer was, no, it takes place over an hour and a half.
But this is what makes your film so great. I love films like this one. And like you said, they're open ended. And what I love about that is you have an audience. They see this film, they absorb it, they engage with it, they leave the theater. But then it's them and their friends, and they're sitting around talking about the film afterwards, and they all have their own ideas
That's the whole
as
point.
if
That was our dream. That was our dream. Exactly.
and you did it not only perfectly, brilliantly, and then you throw in the wrench in the whole thing. Did the girl even exist? And I love that because now we're
The
thinking of the
mystery
story
becomes
and the
Yeah.
girl. Go ahead.
there,
Yeah.
there's no more mystery when you solve it, and then the fun ends.
Yeah. Well,
That's part of, if let's say you're listening to classical music. It's not the role of the composer to tell you that this is sad, or that it's for dancing. This is something you have to leave to the people to make their own choice. That's why we enjoy art. We need it. We lie to ourselves about what it is. You listen to a romantic song and you start thinking that it's about you and the person you love, or it's about your life. Of course it isn't. It's a delusion, and you know that it is. But that's the power of the piece, is that it actually, you're now, while you're having those cogitations, you're inside of the work. You're not on the outside. It took you in. That's a magical trick that you can't buy. And if it actually works, then you did your job.
yeah.
You did your job. You did your job better than I've seen most ever do it. And
Man,
I want to see films that causes the audience to continue to talk about them after they see it. And that this is how you do it, and this is how you do it right. And The Girl Who Cried Pearls did it perfectly. And when it comes to, I was kind of wondering, the scale of the characters, how tall were they actually?
I don't know, 12 to 16 inches or something.
Yeah, the girl herself. Well, there's kids and adults, so it was a bit of a challenge for us scale wise, because you don't want to have the kids be too small as puppets to be able to manipulate them. But then if you're, and you don't want the adults to get too big, so it was that really was the criteria. And every film we do is a little different.
Over the
Well,
years, our puppets have been getting bigger because our hands are now shakier and our eyesight is worse. So
Well, okay. Here's one of the scenes that I loved from the cinematography side of things. When the young boy, he's poor, he's on the other side of the wall and he's looking through the knothole in the wall. I love the way you created the camera shot in which you see that it's the camera basically looking upwards towards the mother, the father, and the daughter. As because it shows that the young boy, he's down low and he's looking up, which to me made the mother even scarier.
Well, that's great. No, that was exactly the idea, was that we were trying to be, we cheated it a little bit, but we wanted it to very much always be the point of view, that you never got a sense of that room as any other place, but then other than his eyeballs view of it, which was kind of a pain because you have major story points you're trying to tell, and you always have this restriction. But no, that's wonderful that you noticed that. I have nothing to comment on other than to say thank you.
No, there are things that just catch my eye, but and like I said, this film has so much detail. So how long did it take to plan the design of the animation and all the elements, such as designing the multiple locations, the pawn shop, the dock, the interior of the home, and then all the minute details? I mean, it must have been maddening to create the interior of the pawn shop.
Well, maddening. No, that's kind of in some ways, that's the fun part. I mean, I would say, it's a very small team. There was just myself, Maciek, Brigitte Henry, and that's basically it. Building and then and it's a whole combination of finding little books and items in antique stores, building things from scratch, going through the garbage and finding things. Honestly, 3D printing objects that you can't find in any of those other places.
And poaching some stuff from previous productions.
Yeah.
Madame Tutli Putli's record player is, for example, on sale at the pawn shop.
Yeah. And the piano is from Gymnasia. We've never done that before, but there were just too many things. There were too many things to put in that pawn shop that we had to start stealing from our old movies.
But who's going to know, right?
I mean, even if they do know, I think that might bring them a little, that might be fun.
Well,
what do you
is it true that this film has both English and French mouth animations?
Yeah,
Because
we made,
for a 17-minute animated film, which I found to be longer for animation, that sounds like a daunting task. Why two versions?
we made we originally planned to make a film only in French. We decided only towards the end that we should make two versions, but they're both, in our minds, are equally legit. We worked just as hard on both of them. We have, of course, they required a different performance for the narration. We had a great local Quebecois actor named James Heineman to do the French version, and Colin Fior to do the English version. But we treated them with equal authority.
And this is Montreal. This is a bilingual city. This is a French city.
Yeah, if the story actually happened, it would have happened in French.
Well, yeah, I'm so used to reading subtitles. I would have been fine with it being in French.
But you know what the problem with that is? That would have the problem.
Then you wouldn't see all the detail.
All those details. It
You
allows
are
you to
absolutely right.
Yeah,
sink into the story without reading was important for
Very.
us. And in fact, that's one of the main reasons we did two versions.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
At first I didn't think of that because like I said, I'm so used to reading subtitles from films from all over the world, but a lot of the animated films, some of them there is no dialogue, so the story's told with movement and music. But
Right.
in your case, I completely understand why you did that because my
And we
eyes
solved the
were
problem
going
in an
everywhere.
overworked way, like this was the first time we had speaking in any of our puppet films.
Wall to wall speaking too. So that's why.
Exactly. So if our idea was that if you're constantly at the bottom of the screen reading, trying to catch up with things as they're replaced, then the visuals are so rich and crowded as it is, crammed from left to right, that something would have to go, and your experience would be, I think, unfairly compromised.
Well, this is such a huge award-winning film. What were some of the audience's reactions to the film at particular film festivals, and what were some of the most common questions you received?
Well, I think we had the film premiered in Annecy. It opened Annecy, actually. It was the first film. And that was a great crowd, a lot of animation people. It had a really nice reaction. And some of it is you don't really know what you're getting until you don't know really what's funny until it's in front of an audience. Turns out nothing in this case. But there's a moment. The big moment is actually, since the spoiler moment, the big twist surprise when the box falls. The At the Toronto Film Festival, at the Annecy Film Festival, even when we just showed it recently, the audience makes a sound that I don't think I've ever heard, at least in my experience, in audience making. It's like this disbelief, nervous laughter. Like it's just an amazing collective sound to hear.
But a conflicted sound. Some people are like, we even read some comments. It's something you should never do, but I don't know. I guess we had free time.
Yeah.
But there was a comment that said, "I just love it when a director ends the film in a way I didn't expect." And then scroll down a little bit. "I hate it so much when a director ends a movie the way I didn't expect." I think we made something that gives you, to us, that was great. We love the idea that we somehow avoided shoveling morality into your head, that we didn't tell you what to think, that we didn't resolve the entire thing for you, but left you with, if let's say the two people who made those comments are friends, they're going to have a debate about this. And if you can, like you were saying earlier, if you can provoke a debate after something that only lasted 17 minutes, well, that's a win. That's interesting. That means that it's not an over-the-shoulder proposition. It means it's something that'll linger in your subconscious for a while.
And I think one of the nicest compliments we've gotten since the beginning, people don't think we wrote it. People think that it's adaptation. And when you're making a fable like this film is, that's a great compliment. To make it feel authorless, and like it's a story that must have come from some other place, some other time, from smarter, more ancient, smarter people who are probably dead. That's as good as it gets.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can see why they would think that. I mean, if you hear the title, the Girl That Cried Pearls, and you see this film, you're thinking that it was probably pulled from a 16th or 17th century story.
I guess we successfully faked being both smart and dead.
It all goes back that, like you said, and I had said earlier, when you have a film that creates debate, I think the greatest thing about that is that people still love film. They still want to talk about it. Stories intrigue people. We all have that internal whodunit element to where we want to try to figure everything out. But I like films ending the opposite of what we would think they would end. And I just love this film. I love, love, love this film.
Man, thank you.
Yeah.
We couldn't have hoped for more. Really.
I don't think I can heap enough praise on both of you on how incredibly brilliant and spectacular this film really is. Because when it first started, I was like, hey, I'll tell you what happened. I started the film the first time I saw it. The moment, I'm talking 2 seconds in, I paused it. I'm looking at the outside of the building and I'm like, if you're paying attention, you get it. If you're not, you're thinking that building's real. And I'm sitting there just looking at it paused, and I'm like, I want to see how the rest of this film goes, because I was already impressed 2 seconds in,
That's
and
sort of the power of the medium, you know.
But it's dangerous when you make a film like ours, when if we were not talking about the story, but we were just talking about the decor, that was always the danger of this movie, you know, that we would not that we were pretty confident about the decor. But
yeah,
we've seen
yeah, you would
we
have
were
to be.
but we've seen movies where that's all you got. That's like a empty gingerbread house. Um, if we're not talking about the story as well.
Well, yeah, you don't want the other elements of the film to outshine the actual story, but it
of
didn't
course.
here. The story stood by itself, and everything else made the story even better. The
At the same
looks,
time, the any credibility you take in the story is completely relative to the visuals. It's the idea of a stop motion animated puppet that is consequently done to such detail is that it makes you, unlike, let's say, something that was drawn, um, makes you believe that anything is possible, that the impossible, the fantastical and the unlikely um, are believable, and by doing that you can make a story involving magic that doesn't seem like you're lying.
Yeah, you need all of those elements. Exactly. Story, sets, music, sound design. If it's not all, but I have to say, I mean, these compliments are amazing. I feel like this is not a real podcast, but our mothers got together and hired to compliment us.
yeah, yeah. You know,
Our moms put you up to this.
Yeah.
no, people who know me know I don't look at film the same way as other people do. You know, I'm looking at it, especially with this film. I'm looking at the creativity, but in this film, what the the word that stands out to me when I saw this film was pure animated cinematic artistry. I was so taken back. I
That's
mean, there
amazing.
are
Listen,
films that I can
yeah.
see within 60 seconds and go, "Oh my gosh." And this film, and I've seen quite a few animated films this past season, but this one is, I have my top 3 favorites. And this one's my favorite.
Listen, that honestly, it's a shame there's no longer DVD boxes because you'd be filling up. We'd have to put an insert in already. I think.
No.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
for both of you.
We're beyond touched. You can't.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how meaningful your
Well,
words are.
I'm being honest. I'm being sincere here, and this
it's
this
just
is your
astonishing.
second Oscar nomination, correct?
Yes.
So how does it feel this time?
You know,
We don't remember how it felt the first time, and we probably won't remember this either. We just got back from the Oscar luncheon in Los Angeles. This is our first morning back home, and it's so intense and so like, we were talking to Steven Spielberg, man. Like, he was saying what you were saying, but it was Steven Spielberg, and like the morning after, I just felt like I had a feverish dream in which I met Steven Spielberg and he saw and loved our film. Like, these are not normal moments. You have, now it's normal. Now I have to take my daughter to swim class, and do laundry. But the whole Oscar experience seems to take place in another world. You hit it. You kind of click into a gear while you're in those moments, and you run with it. It's amazing it's actually amazing that we can kind of do this
Well, for
without a
both
break.
of you,
But
so
but
so for both.
it
No, go
doesn't
ahead.
stay in your memory like a normal moment does.
Well, for both of you, Because the Oscar luncheon is the I mean, it's a big deal. But for both of you, does that type of opportunity open up brand new doors for new collaborations for the future?
I mean, it's entirely possible, but I think one of the big differences here, it's more, it's less a kind of entry to Hollywood and more a way to meet people who we might one day love to collaborate with, like, um, with, not that Steven Spielberg is calling, but yeah, no, I think we're very comfortable with our world, and for sure, on March 17th when we get back to the grind of making movies, there's no question that Oscar nomination opens up doors, it opens up funding, it opens up collaborations. I think it's important to enjoy this moment though for what it is, and just put that out of your head till March 17th. We have that little certificate, and everyone will take our email on March 17th. And right now, it's more about these experiences of getting to talk movies with Steven Spielberg for 2 minutes, talking about special effects with Guillermo del Toro for a few minutes. You know, Meeting and talking movies. As you said, it's cinema love. And if you look at the Oscars that way, last time around we met Rick Baker, one of the all-time great special effects, or makeup masters. That's a memory I won't forget. We're not asking him to make us a werewolf.
And even if we did, the thing is, even if we did ask him to make us a werewolf, he wouldn't. That's not actually how this is going to go.
And we got our own guy, actually, Adrien Moreau.
What it does do is that, I mean, what we do here in Montreal is that we work with our dearest friends. This city has an insane wealth of talent. We're all kind of modest about it, and people are quiet about it, and few people even know we exist. But all around us, where there is such a magnum energy of creativity, and we ask them. I think, if anything, the Oscar nods make them think that if they say yes, it won't be a complete waste of their time. Of course, that forces us to work on the next level to ensure that their trust in us is validated. And so moments like this, when this validation happens, is so great for us on that level, that we didn't screw our friends, that when they said yes and they gave us their time, that the worst thing you can do is waste someone's time, and hopefully moments like this make people think that it was worthwhile.
It was worthwhile. It was simply worthwhile. And ladies and gentlemen, The Girl Who Cried Pearls is simply a stunning story, and with its own unique animation, making it stand out among the other Oscar contenders. The story is told from two locations. In Montreal, at the dawn of the 20th century, a poor boy falls in love with a girl whose sorrow turns into pearls. He sells them to a ruthless pawnbroker who hungers for more. Tempted by greed, the boy must choose between love and fortune, and the choice could damn his soul. Now, in modern day Paris, an elegant grandfather recounts the story of the poor boy in a turn of the 20th century Montreal. Desperate for food and shelter, a ragged street urchin finds an abandoned apartment to sleep, but life is full of surprises. Now, unaware that an extraordinary person lives behind the wooden kitchen wall, the young squatter soon discovers the marvelous gift of a sad girl, and profound feelings of first love begin to fill his soul. However, pure intentions go hand in hand with choice and regret, as a shady pawnbroker ruins everything with his greed, and the burden of consequence demands an answer. So, what happened to The Girl Who Cried Pearls? The Girl Who Cried Pearls is one of the best animated short films I have ever seen. The story is engaging. The animation is pure French cinema, and you just want to watch it again and again. And I have to thank two-time Oscar nominated Chris and Maciek for sharing your nominated film with me today. I absolutely loved it.
Listen, that was a stunning explanation of the film, and we're speechless. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you
Well,
so much.
well,
Thank
you're
you.
very, very welcome. And I am going to be with the rest of the billion people who are going to be tuning in to the Academy, well, to the 98th Academy Awards, and we will soon find out whose name will be called on that wonderful night. And who knows, it could be Chris and Maciek. So we will see. But regardless, they'll always be introduced as two-time Oscar nominees until their next film, and or we'll see if they will always be introduced as Oscar winning creators. So, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you get the chance to see The Girl Who Cried Pearls, take it from me, you're going to just go, wow. And a film that creates conversation. So when you see it with somebody else. Don't watch it alone. Watch it with somebody else. Strike up conversations about film and cinema. That's what we want. And it's people like these two gentlemen here that have created films that cause us to have more conversations and fall in love with cinema all over again. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can watch or listen to all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, Spotify, iTunes, and more. And remember, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.